Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience in the waiting room while we just got Leah set up. I just had a fascinating conversation with Phoebe Moanta on how to be a ally in the workplace. And I didn't want it to end, but I also wanted to get to Leah. So thank you so much. For everyone that was at VID21 last year, Leah did one of my favorite sessions. And today we're going to talk about shut the hell up. So that's not Leah Mether, shut the hell up. It's how do we get ourselves to shut the hell up? Leah is based down in Gippsland in Victoria and helps people get out their own way and step up for success with the development of soft skills. She's a speaker, trainer, coach, facilitator, and author known for her direct, enthusiastic, and relatable style. With a background in leadership, corporate communications, and journalism, Leah works with leaders and teams to help them improve their communication, mindset, and self-management. Her work is based on the belief that soft skills are the new hard skills. We are our own biggest roadblock to success, and no one is a perfect communicator. Everyone can improve. So Leah, thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to have you. And I don't want to tell you to shut the hell up. I'm going to tell myself to shut the hell up for the next little while and sit back and enjoy.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Julia, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. It is lovely to see some familiar faces on the call, and hello to those who are watching this session at another time. Before I do kick off, I want to acknowledge that I'm zooming into you today from the land of the Gunai-Kurnai people and pay respect to elders past and present, and acknowledge any emerging leaders who might be watching this presentation, and to acknowledge the land of which we all zoom in from today as well. Now, when I saw the theme for VID21 this year, shape your future is the theme. And I ran through all the different things I talk about and teach through keynotes and training, you know, those whole soft skills, everything from how to have tough conversations and communicate under pressure to self-management. And I thought, what fits shape your future? I realized that it had to be this session that I spoke to you about, because when we really get to the heart of it, the biggest thing that will hold you back from being able to shape your future, the biggest roadblock to your success in life, is usually ourselves. And we don't like to admit that. It can be actually really confronting to admit that, but it's not our situation, our circumstance, other people. That's not to say those things don't play a part. They absolutely can. But if we really get to the heart of what is going to hold us back the most, it is usually ourselves. And it's usually our self-doubt, our fear of failure, our feelings of inadequacy, and that dreaded voice of imposter syndrome. Now, we all have that little voice. And for some of you, maybe it's not so little. For some of you, maybe it's that loud, shouty voice that never shuts the hell up. And it says things like this: I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. It's not the right time. I probably won't get the job anyway, so I won't bother applying. What will people think of me if I do that thing? Will I just embarrass myself? Who am I to be that, to do that, to try that? Who am I? Now, that voice might sound familiar to some of you. I know it certainly does to me. And for those of you watching from Australia, we've got an added level of pressure here in Australia because self-doubt is almost celebrated. And that's because there's something that's a massive part of our culture that I bloody hate. What do you think that might be, folks? Anyone want to pop it in the chat? What might that be? Any ideas? Yeah, Julia, tall poppy syndrome. Now, for anyone watching who doesn't really know what tall poppy syndrome is, it's the idea that if someone's shining a bit too brightly, someone's getting a bit far ahead of themselves, we tear them down. Because the last thing that we want that is celebrated in Australia is being a bit up yourself. So we're all terrified of that, aren't we? We're all terrified of being seen as a bit up ourselves. So we hold ourselves back. And when we hold ourselves back, our self-doubt flourishes. So the interesting thing is, not only do we fear failure, folks, we fear success. And we fear success because we think, well, if I do put myself out there, will there be someone about to tear me down? And the sad thing is, oftentimes there will be. When I first started running workshops and training many years ago now, someone set up a fake Facebook account in the small community that I'm part of. I live in regional Victoria. Someone set up a fake Facebook account to troll me and say things like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to do this? Who do you think you are to train other people? And it's fed all of that self-doubt. Okay, so sadly, sometimes this will be there. We also let that self-doubt run our mind, but also we sometimes articulate it, don't we? And we talk ourselves down out loud to other people. One way we do this is through our use of the word just. And I really want you to think how often you use this word. Oh, I'm just acting in the role. Oh, I'm just a mum. Oh, I just wanted to have a chat with you about this. Now, one of the other VID21 speakers, Jeff Schweezo, who some of you might have caught his Projectify talk. Jeff used to be my boss. He was my boss on the Gippsland Water Factory project here in Gippsland. And he highlighted a key difference between Australian and American employees. Jeff's an American himself, and on that project, it was a world first. And we had a lot of American and Canadian people on that project. And Jeff said to me, I notice a real difference between if I ask for a report, how the Americans come in and deliver it and how the Australians do. He said the Americans will come in and put it on my desk and say, hey, Jeff, here's that report you asked for, and walk away. He said, you Australians do a version of this. Jeff, here's that report you asked for. I'm not really sure if I've hit the mark. I'm not really sure if it's my best work. Have a read. Let me know what you think. If it needs any changes, yeah, get back to me. I'm not really sure it's my best work. And then we walk out. And he said to me, what you are doing when you do that is putting doubt in my mind. So then when I read the report, I'm not just reading it going, let me read the report. I'm reading it with that unconscious bias, which is not just about gender or race. It's unconscious bias of saying, so where are the mistakes? So not only does our self-doubt impact our thinking, it can impact other people's thinking of us. So it is so crucial that we find a way to manage it. Now, there is a reason that this session today is called Shut the Hell Up, How to Control That Little Voice, not how to get rid of it. And I know that will be disappointing for some people because you might have signed up going, yes, tell me how to get rid of my self-doubt, banish it forever. And unfortunately, I can't do that because self-doubt is normal, okay? And what I can do though, is equip you with some tips and skills for managing it. And that's my aim today. The first thing I need you to understand though, before we get into those tips, and I think I'll share 5 with you today, definitely 3, but 5 if we can get through them. And feel free to ask questions at any time, folks, and I'll address those in the chat as we go. The first thing I need you to understand though, is everyone has that little voice. Everyone. It does not matter how smart, confident, competent you are. Every single person, unless you're a total narcissist and sociopath, has that little voice of self-doubt. What sets us apart is how we deal with it. What sets us apart is how we manage it. And this often comes as a surprise to our chronic self-doubters, because when we're chronic self-doubters, we think it's just me. Everyone else has got their shit together and it's just me that doesn't. But I am absolutely here to tell you that it's all of us. I have been hired to deliver a half-day version of this session today by an all-male executive team of a major government agency. They booked it. You've got the managing director, senior execs in the room, and I throw it to them and say, tell me about a time you've had self-doubt. And they all started talking. So this is not just a female thing, but I think men cover it rather than talk about it, but we've all got it and we can all find ways to manage it. So I've got a bit of an idea of who we've got in the room and how we sit. I'm going to get Julia to launch a little poll that's going to pop up on your screen, and I want you to answer it as honestly as you can. Now, we can't see who's ticked what, so go for it as honestly as you can. I want to know how you would rank your little voice of self-doubt. How loud is it for you? I'm just looking in the chat. Yes, Jasmine. I'm just Jasmine speaking to my soul, Leah. Yeah. And if you really want to see if you do it, check your sent box on your emails. Just a quick email, just checking in, just wondering if you've had a chance to read that report yet. We apologise all the time. So it's asking me for one as well. So let me put, yep, there we go. All right. So I wonder what the results are. There we go. So we've got, I think, at least one or a couple of people who it's loud, shouty, it never shuts up and it completely controls your life. And the others on the call, it's that annoying background chatter that's kind of always there and holds you back in some aspects. For no one on this call right now is it a little voice, or, you know, I was going to wonder if anyone had ticked the last one. I was going to kind of ask some questions about why you were here, but that's okay. All right, so that gives us a good picture. So let's get into it. Let's look at how we can manage this little voice. And if something resonates for you, feel free to pop it in the chat. And again, if you've got a question. And yes, Sue, someone called you out on just a while ago. It is a hard habit to break. Quickly on this, because I know so many people do it. If you want to break it, a lot of people do it to be polite in email in particular, because they think, I don't want to come across as the bitch or too rude, which you do have to be conscious of, because email doesn't have tone unless you put it in there. But instead of, you know, just checking in, just wondering, how about, could you please give me an update on that report? Or could you please send it through? It's still polite, but it's taken the just out and it's more assertive. All right, let's get into shut the hell up. Number one, first tip I'll share with you, expect negative thoughts. Expect negative thoughts. Self-doubt is part of being human. And the self-doubt thoughts are just as valid as any other thought that enters your head. The problem for a lot of us is that we think the self-doubt voice has more truth to it, because we have a negative bias. So self-doubt pops in and we hold on to it. We give it a massive old hug. The positive thought that comes in and says, maybe that's BS. Oh no, it goes straight out. And we hold on to that self-doubt. Now, interestingly, self-doubt on its own is not necessarily a bad thing. We need self-doubt. Self-doubt is our brain doing its job to protect us. And that is our brain's job. We need that bit of self-doubt to keep us safe. If there is a threat, if I'm standing on the roof of a building and my self-doubt kicks in and I'm thinking about jumping to the roof of another building nearby, and self-doubt screaming at me, don't do it, you're going to die. That is self-doubt doing its job. Self-doubt can also be great for some honest self-reflection. And as leaders or anyone who's looking to grow and improve, we need that. We need to do that. We need some honest self-reflection in our lives where we say, how did I go? Could I have done that better? Where could I improve? What could I do differently next time? That little bit of self-doubt is great, but it's when we hold on to it and give it that big hug and give it more airtime than it's entitled to, that we have the problem. So if we expect negative thoughts, what do we actually do with them? The key here is to see them and acknowledge them, but not hold on to them. How do you do that? For any of you on the call that meditate, you'll be familiar with the idea of not holding on to a thought, because meditation is not clearing your mind of all thought. It's about seeing it and then letting it pass. So for some of you, that might be helpful. For others of you though, people like me who are high action people, one of the best tips that I use is to acknowledge the self-doubt, do a quick assessment. And if I realize that it's up here, it's my self-doubt talking rather than a genuine threat, I take action quickly. It's almost like embracing that Nike slogan of just do it. And I want to show you how I do this in part of my life that I absolutely love, and that Mia, who is here now, has been part of with me. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. So for some people, the thought of obstacle racing terrifies them, and it's their idea of hell. Crawling through the mud, running up and jumping off things, terrifying. For me, it is my happy place. And this is one of the obstacles at Tough Mudder. And I have done Tough Mudder a couple of times. And when I do it with a crew, a great crew of friends, every time I do it, I'm always at the front of the queue for the obstacles. Now, I had someone say to me on this day when we tackled Tough Mudder, Leah, I wish I was brave like you, because you just go to the front and you just do it. And I burst out laughing. And I said, that is not because I am brave. That is because I'm a chronic overthinker. And if I go to the back of the queue and look at something like that and stare at it going, how the hell do I get up that? I am going to talk myself out of it, and I'm not going to do it. So over on the right there, that's where we lined up. We had to run full pelt at this obstacle, and we had people along the top, and you just had to jump and reach up and try to get pulled up. Everything in my head was saying, oh my gosh, you're not going to be able to do it. You've got short legs. You can't run very fast. This is going to be a disaster. So I ran, and right at the bottom there, before the obstacle starts, where you can see it's pretty rough, I tripped and I stumbled and I lost all of my speed. So what I did was I turned around and I ran back to the front of the queue again, and I turned around and I ran again. And this is what happened. I got up. I got up because I assessed it and I just took action. And I want you to think about where in your life that approach might be useful, where you know the more you think about it and overthink and stress, you're going to talk yourself out of it. Where in your life is just taking action and doing it the approach that will be successful. And hello to Liz, who's just joined as well. Number 2, train your brain. Some of you will have done mindset work before. For those of you who haven't, I'm going to give you a really quick lesson in just a moment. Before I do though, I want to ask you all a question. When you think about your self-doubt, when you think about when it's at its strongest, what do you notice? Are there any common themes? When is self-doubt at its loudest for you? Pop it in the chat if you know what that might be for you. When I'm stretching myself, Sue, beautiful. Yeah. And that's exactly what I noticed as well, Sue, when I looked at mine. And the reason I ask this question is because so often we think of self-doubt as that stop, don't take action, because we had the self-doubt. But when you actually look at when is it there, self-doubt is not there when you're in your comfort zone. And some people say to me, yes, Leah, and that's why I stay in my comfort zone, because then the self-doubt's quiet. And that's okay if everything you want to achieve in your life, when we talk shaping our future, if everything's in your comfort zone, great, you stay there, that's fine. But for most of us, we have things that are outside our comfort zone. And when we recognize that it's when we're stretching ourselves or going out of our comfort zone that self-doubt kicks off, we can start to reframe it and say, this isn't because I need to stop. This is because I'm trying something new. Now, when we recognize that, instead of getting scared by our self-doubt, we can train our brain to respond with excitement, because fear and excitement are very, very similar. So instead of I'm terrified, I'm scared, we can go with I'm excited. For Julia, it's when I've got too much on. Oh, Julia, that's when it's big for me too. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I've said yes to too many things and I don't feel like I can prepare enough, that's when it gets really loud for me too. And for Megan, when I'm in an ambiguous place, and I feel I need to take all the responsibility for all the things. So it's really important to notice this and do this self-reflection, because once you know when it's the loudest, you can assess it more objectively. We want to develop more of a growth mindset than a fixed mindset. And Liz is making 4 cakes right now that she should have said no to. Goodness me, Liz, that'll keep you busy. So some of you will have done mindset work before. For those of you who haven't, let's have a quick look at the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. Carol Dweck wrote the brilliant book on this topic around fixed and growth mindset. If we have a fixed mindset, that's when our self-doubt gets really, really loud, because we say things like, I'm either good at it or I'm not. When we're frustrated, we give up. We don't like to be challenged. If we fail, we're the bad person and we beat ourselves up and up. If other people succeed, we feel threatened. And we really do believe our abilities determine everything. Our self-doubt flourishes in that space. A growth mindset, though, a growth mindset embraces the power of a beautiful little word that I want you all to hang on to. And that little word is yet. I'm not good at it yet. I may not get there yet, but I can learn. I can practice. I can improve. I can develop. When I'm frustrated, I persevere. I want to challenge myself. When I fail, I learn. Tell me I try hard. And when other people succeed, I want to lift them up. So how can we train our brain to realize that actually it's all about learning? We can start doing things that are a bit outside our comfort zone. We can start taking baby steps. And it can be as simple as things like try brushing your teeth with the other hand, the opposite hand, the non-dominant hand. Try driving home from work a different route to normal. Go a different direction. Now you might be thinking, but Leah, what does this have to do with self-doubt? You're training your brain to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's what we need to do. We have to train our brain to adapt and respond. And that can help quieten that self-doubt. The other thing we need to do when it comes to training our brain is get good at controlling our controllables and letting the rest go. Self-doubt flourishes, and I think someone put it in the chat, it might have been Megan, yes, when I take on responsibility for all the things. And then we doubt ourselves. Let me give you an example of this. I can't control what any of you think of this session right now. You might all bloody hate it. And I can't change your mind. I can't jump through the screen and run after you and say, what about that bit? That was good. Please like me. It'd be really weird and uncomfortable, folks. But if in my head, I thought, no, I can control all of you and whether you like this session or not, I would be distracted and doubting myself. I would be thinking, oh my gosh, they haven't got their camera on. Is it because they're walking, or is it because they hate this and they've left and they've walked away and then that person looked down, what's going on there? How many of us do this? we read other people and put our self-doubt onto it. And we're trying to control things that we can't control. So what can I control? When I'm up here presenting to you, what is in my control? Me. I can control the energy I bring, the enthusiasm, the content I deliver, the way I present. I can control me, and I have to let the rest go. Because whether I doubt myself or not doesn't change it. So I want you to ask yourselves, when that self-doubt kicks in, what can I control here and what can't I? Now, of course, I am always looking to improve and do better. So of course I care what you think. If you all said, Leah, that was crap, I've got to learn. But I can't change your mind. So I'm very much focused on where that control lies. Number 3, look at it objectively. Self-doubt is not you. Just because that little voice is saying you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you might not get the job, that does not mean that it is real. Our self-doubt is often based on faulty logic. It might be based on stories you were told by, sometimes sadly for some people, by their parents, or by really influential people in their lives as they were growing up. It might be a story you told yourself, but quite often that logic is really faulty. So how can we look at it objectively and see, is there truth to this, or is it just a story I'm telling myself? A great way to do this is to ask yourself, if my best friend was saying this, what would I tell them? What would I say to a friend? Because chances are, folks, we are way nicer to our friends than we are to ourselves. If your friend said, hey, I'm thinking of applying for that job, what do you think? Chances are you would not say to them, don't bother, you're rubbish, you're never going to get it. We're not that harsh to our friends, but we do it to ourselves all the time. So what would I say to a friend? Another strategy is to get it out of your head and onto paper. Once you see it out of your head, it's really easy to spiral off in your head. But once you get it out of your head and onto paper, you can often see whether the truth is there or not. A great mate of mine who leads a team of about 80 people, he does a good old-fashioned pro and con list. He said, when I'm really doubting a decision that I need to make, I will put it on paper. And he said, almost every time the decision is clear when I get it out of my head. But when it stays up there, it can be all-consuming. So what are the facts? What's the evidence? And yes, and Megan, you have anticipated the next tip. Well done, you. And that is the importance of naming it. We need to talk back to our self-doubt, folks. And any of you who have read Claire Bowditch's book, Your Own Kind of Girl, will know that Frank is the name that she gives her self-doubt. For those of you who aren't familiar with Claire Bowditch and that book, I highly recommend it. It's an absolute cracker. One of Australia's top singer-songwriters, was a presenter on ABC Radio for a couple of years as well. Incredible talent, has sung with some of the top singers worldwide, as well as having her own albums. And she has battled self-doubt for years and years. And even just knowing that, you know, we see her up on the stage, we see her just killing it in what she does. She's doubting herself too. We need to talk back to it. And that's why this session is called Shut the Hell Up, because that's what I encourage you to say back to your self-doubt. Self-doubt is nasty, and we need to speak back to it. And different people take different approaches, but for me, I like to get a bit aggressive back with it. For you, you might want to be kind and calm with yours. That's fine. There's no one size fits all. For me, I picture my self-doubt as the devil on my shoulder. You know those old school cartoons where there's a devil on the shoulder whispering into your ear? That is my self-doubt. And it is there and it is in my ear going, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are, girl from Gippsland in Victoria? Who do you think you are to write a book, to present at a worldwide conference? Who do you think you are? It is there. But on the other shoulder is the angel. But she's not meek and mild. She is fierce. And she is talking back to that devil saying, shut the hell up. I'm doing it anyway. Sure, you doubt yourself. You're going to be fine. Have a crack. You're doing it anyway. Another colleague of mine, the fabulous Marie McPherson, that some of you might be familiar with. Actually, I know some of you are familiar with. Marie pictures her self-doubt as pixies that dance on the table. And when she's presenting, those pixies threaten to distract her because they're there having a party on the table. That's that self-doubt. And if she focuses on that, and for a lot of people, public speaking is their biggest fear. She said, if I focus on the pixies dancing on the table, the self-doubt, oh, did they look like they were falling asleep? What's going on with them? I lose my train of thought because I'm focusing on the pixies. And I run public speaking training, and people often say to me, my biggest fear is that I go blank. When do we go blank? When we get up here and get distracted by those pixies. So what Marie does, she imagines a glass jar. And can you remember that old M&M ad where it was get in the bowl? Marie says to her pixies, get in the jar. Get in the jar, and then she's screwing that imaginary lid on and they're off to the side. The pixies are still there. The self-doubt is still there. It's still banging away on the side of that glass jar. But right now, you are not welcome here. Now, on the drive home from the session she's delivered, she might crack the lid and let them talk. Say, how could you do better? What would you do differently next time? But then that lid goes firmly on and is screwed shut. Now, pixies might not work for you. Devils that sit on the shoulder might not work for you. It doesn't matter what works for you, but you need to find something. You won't magically start managing your mind and managing your self-doubt unless you take action. So you might want to name it. And I'm looking in the chat there. Yeah, Taming the Inner Critic podcast was great. It certainly was. Yeah, I got distracted by the pixies, Sue. That would throw people, wouldn't it? But you might want to name your self-doubt so that you can separate from it. Does anyone have a name for their self-doubt? If you pick one, pick a name that you can imagine saying those nasty things, but I do encourage you to not pick the name of someone from your life who has been nasty to you, because if you do that, it can be quite a triggering thing, and that's certainly not what we want. Suze is the gremlin from Labyrinth. Lil Steve is nauseous, love it. Can't pick Frank. Frank's the father-in-law. Yeah, that'd be awkward, Julia. Particularly if you were saying F off, Frank. Might not go down so well with the family. But it's about, again, that separation. So when that voice starts kicking off, that you hear it and you can talk back to it. Number 5, reframe failure. Who on this call is a bit of a perfectionist? Anyone? Or is that just me? No one else? Yep, Sue is. Yeah. So I call myself a recovering perfectionist now, because it is something that I continue to work really hard on, but it's something that really controlled my life for probably the first 25 years. I was the high achiever, the person who had to get straight A pluses, who always wanted to get it right. I was petrified of failure, absolutely petrified of failure, until I realized that it was the only way I was going to get anywhere in my life. Because when we are scared of failure, we don't go for the job. Because what if I don't get it? That would be the end of the world. So I'm not going to do that. Okay? The most successful people don't get to where they are because they just succeed. And look, here I am, all successful. That is not how it happens, folks. The most successful people get to where they are because they try something, they stuff it up almost every time. They stuff it up, they learn, then they try again. They fail their way to success. I would argue that it is only failure if you don't try in the first place or you don't learn from your mistakes. Okay, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's not going to get you anywhere. But if you're learning each time and then trying again, that is how we get to success. One of the most famous, and there's so many famous failures out there, celebrities who have got to where they are after many failures. One of the most famous to talk about is J.K. Rowling. She was rejected 12 times for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. 12 times. How many of us would have got the first 3 or 4 rejections and gone, oh, I guess I must be a rubbish writer, and put that manuscript in the bottom drawer? A lot of us would have. She was persistent. She kept going. She kept learning. She kept working on it. And then it got published. I want to share my screen with you, one of my favorite quotes when it comes to failure. And it's a quote from Michael Jordan. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Now, what Jordan shows us when he gives us that quote is the importance of that train your brain to what you focus on. Because if he focused on every time he stuffed up, he would have given up. But instead, he used that as motivation to try again, to train harder, to keep going. And that's what we all need to do, folks. There is no such thing as perfect, and you don't get good at what you don't do. So if you have self-doubt around taking action in some part of your life, that self-doubt is not going to magically go away if you avoid doing the thing. The only way you're going to quieten it is to try it. If self-doubt and your fear is public speaking, start public speaking. You'll be terrified. But every time you do it, you will get less terrified. And that's how we do the reframe, okay? And just looking, a shaky video from Jasmine. That is quite okay, Jasmine. We've got to do that juggle, don't we? So I've got some questions that I'm going to pop up that I use to ask myself when I'm doubting myself. And I'm going to use the example, unless anyone decides to put one in the chat, of applying for a job, because this is one I see a lot. You know, we want to shape our future. We want to go for that promotion, but I probably won't get it, or I'm scared to put myself out there. And these are questions that I work through with people when I'm coaching them. So let me share my screen. First thing is to think of that thing that you're holding back from. And we're going to use that example of going for a job. A lot of the time when we doubt ourselves, we've got that fear in our head. And when we know that we're overthinking it. So we keep trying to push it to the side and we think, oh, I probably won't get the job anyway. Probably, oh, this might happen if I get up in public speak. Oh no, don't think about it or it'll come true. I actually encourage you to go there. I actually encourage you to confront that fear and ask yourself, okay, what's the biggest fear or the worst that could happen if I did that? So if I went for that job, if I applied for that job, what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen might be that I don't get it. I totally balls up the interview and I don't get that job. Okay, what's the reality if that happens? Again, go there, face it. What's the reality? Okay, I might be embarrassed. I might be really embarrassed. One of my colleagues might get it and I might think, oh my gosh, now they know that I went for it and I'm not as good as them. That'd be the reality. I'd be really embarrassed and I'd still be in the job that I'm in now, which I don't like that much. Okay, so that sucks, but is it as bad as you thought it might be? Okay, because our fear of what might happen is often greater than the reality. So, okay, we don't get the job. What contingency plan can we put in place, or action can we take to mitigate that? What could we do to give us a better chance of getting the job? Well, we could make sure we practice. We could prepare as best we can. We could bounce off a friend. We could make sure we do everything possible to do our best in that job interview. Control our controllables. Can you control whether someone gives you the job or not, folks? No, you've got zero control over that. Your job is to go in there and do the best you can with that job interview. And success is actually walking away knowing you did your best. It's not getting the job. And a lot of people get this wrong when I say to them, what's success? And they say, oh, that I'm hired to get the job. But you have zero control over that. You don't know if there's another internal candidate. You don't know if they're looking for something else or there's someone already acting in the role. So success has to be reframed to doing your absolute best and then letting the chips fall where they may. What would be the benefit if you did this thing and succeeded? Well, in this case, I get that job, my dream job perhaps. And this last question is one we often don't ask. What's the outcome or worse that would happen if we didn't act or try at all? If you didn't act, yes, you might not get the job, but if you do nothing, doing nothing is a decision in itself. If you do nothing, you're saying, well, I accept where I am now. If you do nothing, you definitely won't get the job because you haven't thrown your hat into the ring to be considered. So we have to reframe failure, folks. Yes, failure can be scary. It's not fun a lot of the time, but it is how we succeed. And the more you practice this, the more you embrace imperfection, the better you get at it. I knew this was a weakness for me. So when I set my business values a few years ago now, my number one business value is have a crack. And that's how it's written. My number one business value, have a crack. Have a go, Leah. Put yourself out there. You will doubt yourself, but put yourself out there and have a go. So before I wrap up and take any questions just for a couple of minutes, if we want to shape our future, if we really want to do that, if we want to be able to take on, I know some of you have been in a lot of the other sessions by brilliant other speakers as part of this conference. If you want to be able to act on their advice, we have to start by managing ourselves. We have to start by managing that little voice. Because if you don't start working to manage and control it, it will control you. And I want to leave you today with something to think about. Life isn't a practice run. This is it. And none of us get out of life alive. And I hate to be fatalistic, folks, but that's the truth. And when you get to the end of your life, hopefully a really long time away from now, and you reflect and look back on the life you had, do you want to say, I wonder what would have happened if I'd backed myself? I wonder what would have happened if I had had a crack and overcome that self-doubt and taken action, even if other people tore me down, even if people didn't support me, even if I fell flat on my face? Or do you want to get to the end of your life and be able to look back and say, I did have a crack, and sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't, but I'm here where I am and I don't have those regrets. There's a beautiful quote that I wear on a bangle on my arm, and it's from an Australian poet called Erin White. She wrote this when she was 17 years old, would you believe? What if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? And you just won't know unless you get out there and try. So thank you, folks. I am happy to take questions for about 5 minutes if anyone has one. Before we do finish up though, I do want to end this session the same way I end all of my workshops, and that's to ask you to do something. And I want you to put it in the chat. Because the risk whenever you listen to a session like this, you know, it's over lunch, sure, we can listen in, maybe take a couple of nuggets if something resonated with us. The real risk is we listen, we go, yep, there's some good bits there, and then we do nothing with it. And I might have not told you anything new today, and that's fine. The question though that I have for you, if you know it, are you doing it? Because knowing and doing are two very different things. So the last thing I want you to do in the chat is I want you to pick one thing. What is one action, one baby step? Start small. Developing new skills takes time. What is one baby step you will take after this session today to help you manage your self-doubt? And I want you to put it in the chat because I want that accountability, and make it small. Make it small, and I want you to focus on this for the next couple of weeks and start to try to make it a habit. Learning to say no at work once a week. Excellent, Liz. And I love that you've made it really specific. Once a week. I have to be able to do that once a week. Name it for Elizabeth. Beautiful. Give it a name. Make that a priority after this, and then get comfortable asking yourself, is it Frank or is it not? Okay. We have to talk back to, I often say, talk back to your self-doubt like you would an annoying toddler, but with a bit more swearing. Okay. Where you just go, no, enough. Those of you who are parents like me and are used to saying that. Continue the practice of meditation. Yes. And feel better equipped to talk back to Maud and reframe the thinking. Meditation's great practice for letting the thoughts come in and out. The self-doubt of thinking that I won't get more work if I say no. Yeah, that scarcity mindset, Liz, where we have to say yes to everything because what if the work dries up afterwards? I know the other business owners on this call, me included, that is a constant battle that we have to really work with to manage. Give it a crack before you overthink. Yes, Nosh, absolutely. Give it a crack. Don't let that overthink. If you fail, take the learnings. Forget the mistake, remember the lesson. And for Sue, she did it today. She put her hand up to be a guinea pig for a facilitation certificate certification. Excellent. Uncomfortable role plays. Oh, and the test material. Love that, Sue. And it will be. You'll get that feeling in your gut. You'll be a bit uncomfortable, but you'll get better at it as a result. For Jasmine, being conscious of the self-doubt and telling it to shut the F up and think about what bad could come of giving it a crack. Yeah, what really is the worst that can happen? So thank you so much for joining me, folks. I hope you have enjoyed it, got something out of it, and I hope you enjoy watching the other speakers as part of this wonderful conference that the incredible Julia has put together and deserves a remarkable round of applause for because she does a phenomenal job. Thank you, everyone.